Let me give you a definition of what depression is. Depression is a mood disorder characterized by what they call anhedonia. Anhedonia is this inability to feel any pleasure anymore. Things that used to bring you pleasure simply don't anymore. One psychologist defined depression as a lethal absence of hope. You just feel like giving up. Depressed people, they sometimes experience extreme sadness and poor concentration, sleep problems, loss of appetite, and feelings of guilt, helplessness, and also hopelessness. When I first read that definition and the symptoms we experience from it, I realized that every one of us are somewhere on this list, that all of us deal with issues of depression from time to time, especially because of all we experienced in the last year. One of the things I love about the Bible is that it's filled with real people who wrestled with real problems just like us. And that includes mental health issues. It's why, if you're not a Bible reader, I just think you should try reading it because you can identify with the people in it. In fact, some of the great people of faith, they struggled with depression. And we're going to look at a story of one of those great people of faith who went through his own bout of depression. His name? Elijah. Elijah had seen God do a lot of miraculous things in his life. He walked so closely with God that people just called him Man of God. Well, we're going to pick up Elijah's story where he gets involved in what is often called the showdown on Mount Carmel. One day, Elijah challenged all the prophets of Baal to a showdown. They were to both offer their own sacrifices and then see which God responds. It's a great story. It's like the final battle of any superhero movie. Well, the prophets of Baal, they pray, but nothing happens. Elijah prays, and God sends fire and consumes his sacrifice. Then Elijah turns to the prophets of Baal and has all of them put to death. Now, I realize that you might have a hard time relating to that part of Elijah's story, but you will be related to the next part. As Elijah's feeling on top of the world, living on top of the mountain, however, things suddenly change for him and he gets depressed. But before we get to his story, let me say something about what many of you believe about God. Many of you think if we're where we're supposed to be with God, we're always going to be on the mountaintop. Things should be easy. That is not true. With God, sometimes there are mountaintops, and sometimes there are valleys, and sometimes there's everything in between. So here's Elijah on the mountaintop. It says, now Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done. Now Ahab is the king at the time, and he's married to Jezebel. Now Ahab may be the king in title, but Jezebel, his wife, is definitely running the show. It says, now Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done, and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, may the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like that of one of them. And so Jezebel threatens Elijah, by the end of the day tomorrow, I'll have you killed. And here's how Elijah responds. It said Elijah was afraid. And so this courageous man of God responds in fear and ran for his life, which is our natural tendency when we're afraid. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there. In other words, he isolated himself, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. And then listen to this prayer. I've had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. You ever feel like that? Let me just say, if you feel like this now and you're thinking about taking your life, we want to help. I want you to stop what you're doing, and I want you to call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And here's that number, 1-800-273-8255. It's 1-800-273-8255. I want you to call. I want you to talk with someone who is there to lovingly walk with you. You just need to know that you're not alone in how you feel. But if there's ever been a time when you wanted to run and escape, do you know what that makes you? Normal. It's what we choose to do in those moments that matters. Now, from Elijah's story, we can learn 3 things about all mental health disorders, including depression. Now, please understand that depression is a very complex issue. There are just multiple layers to it: psychological, mental, emotional, and even spiritual. So keep that in mind as I go through these 3 things. First thing to keep in mind is that Elijah had faulty thinking. Elijah was doing what psychologists call ruminating. And ruminating is a disorder where we engage in what's called self-talk. This is where we create negative things in our mind that aren't true, and we just sit there and we ruminate on those thoughts. I catch myself doing this a few hours after I speak. I just sit and kind of rehearse the message and the reaction or non-reaction to it, and I go, well, that sucked, or that was awful, God didn't use you, you should quit. And those cycles of thoughts just keep going through my mind. The second thing we learn from Elijah's story about mental health is Elijah's feelings led to isolation. That Elijah felt afraid, so he ran. And he was running away with his servant at first. Eventually, though, he left his servant and went on by himself. He isolated, which makes sense because your natural tendency when you start feeling depressed is to isolate. Because you often feel ashamed, embarrassed, and you just don't feel like being around anyone. Do you know why your tendency is to isolate? Your feelings will lead you that way every single time. You need to realize that your emotions lie to you. They're like the Dow Jones. They go up and down. There's good ones and there's bad ones. And when you trust in the bad ones, they will always lead you to the wrong place. I mean, this is what happened to Elijah. He trusted in the wrong feelings and he ended up alone and in the wrong place. Third thing we learn is that Elijah played the comparison game. Remember what he said? He said, I am no better than my ancestors. We do this all the time. Oh, my life isn't that good. I'm a failure. I'm a nobody. I don't have what it takes. I don't measure up. Let me ask you, how do you know that? You think you know that because you compare yourself with everyone else. And now we have social media where you're comparing your miserable moments to everyone's highlight reels. But let me tell you a little secret. Nobody's life is as good as it looks on Instagram, including mine. So if you follow me, I might make it look pretty, but it's not all that pretty. I posted this picture on Thanksgiving. And look at this picture. We all look happy, right? But trust me, we were anything but happy on Thanksgiving. But I'm not going to post that. And I'm not going to post something where I say, oh, here's a picture of me saying something I regret to my wife. I'm not going to post that. And either is anyone else. But this is important because it leads to the faulty thinking and we just start ruminating on that stuff. Well, if you're struggling with depression or you know someone who is, I want to spend the rest of my time getting real practical with you. And the way that I want to do that is I want to give you one word that if you think through this filter, it'll go a long way to help. And it's a word we see in Elijah's story. And here's our word: engage. With depression, our tendency is to isolate or disengage, so it makes sense that a big part in battling it is to learn to engage. And so here are 3 ways I want to encourage you to engage. Here's the first way. I want you to engage physically. Right after Elijah prayed, I've had enough, God, take my life, God begins to care for him. Listen to what he says. He says, then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once, an angel touched him and said, get up and eat. He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank, and then he lay down again. So notice what Elijah does. First, he takes a nap. Actually, he takes 2 of them. Many of you are going through life at an unsustainable pace, and it's not only messing you up physically, but it's also messing up your mind. You need to slow down because eventually you're going to crash. After this, I want to encourage you to go home if you're not home right now. I want you to turn off all your devices. I want you to lay down on your couch or on your bed and take a long nap. And you know what? I want you to do it in Jesus' name. And if someone says, you don't have time to take a nap right now, you just say, I'm just applying what I learned in church today. You might think, I have too much to do. You always do. Take a nap. God showed up for Elijah, and he'll show up for you as well. Well, Elijah not only takes a nap, he also eats. One of the best things that you can do is to just go sit down and have a 1 to 2 hour meal with family or close friends and just enjoy connecting with one another through conversations, and then take a nap. You know, the third thing that you can do is you can engage in exercise. The body is one of the most effective things that we can do to help move us out of the state of depression. Recently, there was a study done where they took a large group of people who struggled with major depression. And then they took this group of people and prescribed 20 to 30 minutes of walking each day. I mean, that was the prescription. Well, they tracked this group of people and found that 65% of them, after the study ended, after just doing 20 to 30 minutes of walking every day, were no longer depressed. Is it a silver bullet? No. Again, because depression is very complex. But just that one thing of engaging the body and getting the blood going went a long way to helping. So first thing I want you to start doing is I want you to start engaging physically. The second thing I want you to do to engage is I want you to engage your mind in what is true. Literally, think about what you think about. In Elijah's story, he was ruminating. Oh God, I'm the only one in this entire country that is committed to you. But here's what God said to him. He said, yet I reserve 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed down to Baal and whose mouths have not kissed him. And so Elijah is ruminating, oh God, I'm the only one. And God responds back, actually, Elijah, that's not true. There are 7,000 just like you. Now, this is so important because we need something to counter our faulty thinking. This is why each day, the first thing I do when I get up, after getting the coffee, of course, I spend some time with God, read the Bible, spend some time in prayer. I start my day filling my mind with truth. Here's what Jesus said about the importance of filling our mind with truth. He said this, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. See, according to Jesus, here's why truth is important. Because truth leads to freedom. I have a counselor friend who, when I talk to him about my ruminating issue I referred to earlier, he'll say this every time. He'll say, Mark, I want you to grab onto what's true. Ask yourself what's really true. Every time I do that, it breaks the cycle of self-talk and I experience freedom from it.